Hello everyone, this is Showboat and welcome to part 3 of my vlog for June 22nd, 2016. In this video, I will be discussing the games that I played during my 3.5-month hiatus. Alright, so let's get on to some happier thoughts, I think. Much happier thoughts. Let's talk about what I was doing over the course of my over 3-month hiatus at at this point. Geez, it's hard to think that it's already been over 3 months. Like my last video was late February, and now it's getting mid to late June at this point. Jeez, it's such a long time without making any videos. But yeah, let's talk about what I was doing over the course of all of that time. Well, as I had mentioned earlier, I did play this MMORPG called Black Desert Online. I played it for a good long while. I was a member of the guild Fortune on the Uno server on North America, and it was great for a while. I really enjoyed my time, both with the game and with the guild, and yeah, thing is, eventually politics happened, and I got tired of game mechanics. It was actually quite bullshit when I think about it in retrospect, because the game itself is way too dependent upon RNG, or random number generation. Basically, it's like playing the lottery over and over and over again with that game. In fact, your character, when you first create your character, all of its stats are randomized around an average value for all of your stats, including hidden stats like things like inherent luck values. It was randomized when you first created your character, and again randomized every time you level up your character. So you would get a random amount of health and magic pools or stamina or whatever you're using on every level up, which was insane. Like the differences could be an entire move's worth of magic at max level, which is completely unbalanced in terms of PvP just to start. And that's not even the only thing that was based off of random numbers. I was really into horse breeding in that game, because yes, that game has horse breeding. Every horse you can level up to level 30. You can breed them at any time, but getting them to level 30 in general was a relatively decent idea, at least into the level 20s range, and there were calculators and all this other nonsense to maximize your chance of getting a higher tiered horse when you breed them, because horses had tiers as well as levels, and the higher the tier, the higher its base statistics, as well as the more statistics it would get on level up, as well as the having higher chances of getting skills, because getting skills on level up was another thing that was based off of random chance, where with every level up that you don't get a skill, the next level up would have a higher chance of getting a skill, and then the higher your tier of the horse, the higher the inherent chances of getting a skill on level up anyway. So, and then some skills are rarer than other skills, so it's like, oh my god, there's so much RNG. And then when you're breeding the horses, for one, there were chances to get male and female that are different chances. Females are rarer than getting males. You can only breed females once for free, in which then you'd have to pay like the equivalent of over $7.50 to breed them one more time, and then they'll never be able to breed again after that. Males can be bred twice before resetting for about $4 or something like that to get another 2 breedings out of. So not only are the females rarer, but they breed less times. Okay? And then when you breed them, the game first determines what tier of horse you're going to end up with, which gets put through this algorithm that takes what the levels of the parent horses are, what tier the parent horses are, how many deaths the parent horses have, which if they have deaths, it reduces chances of getting a better tiered horse, and you can pay to reset the deaths of horses if they've died from being PK'd or things like that, or dying to mobs. And after that, it takes into account the colors of the horses, because every horse has values assigned to red, black, and white, and it adds up each category of color from the parents, and then it picks one at random, and then it picks a horse of the tier that it decided upon that has a value in that color category of exactly that value or lower. It can be that value or less. So it can be any horse of the particular tier that it picked that has that value or less. This is only really important when trying to get, at least at the time, trying to get a tier 7 horse that was purebred. Because at the time, the only tier 7s that existed were, quote, purebred horses, which had very precise color values of either red 7, and then the others were 0, or white 7, with the others of 0, or black of 7, or the others of 0. Not only was it difficult to even get horses that had values that could add up to 7 to use to breed to get a tier 7, but it was only like inherently at highest about a 30% chance to even roll to get a tier 7 in the first place, but then it would have to pick the value that you had above 7 in to get that tier 7 horse. So it was basically a 1/3 chance of a 1/3 chance at highest. At highest. So it's like, oh my god, the layers upon layers of RNG in this game were insane. And then the best gear in the game was also dependent on RNG, because most of it was dropped by enemies with like a 1 in 10,000 chance of dropping. You couldn't even craft the stuff. It was all based off of a random drop chance, and that was just to get one. Many of these items were accessories in which you needed to get, for one, 2 of, and then in order to upgrade those accessories, what you would have to do is combine them together, and when you combine them together to plus them, there's a chance that they would just be completely destroyed and you'd lose both of them, because it would take 2 to combine to get a better version of one, and then you would take that better version and the base version of that same item and combine them again to try and get a +2, and you do the same thing with the base valued one and the +2 to try and get a +3, and as you go up to +5, which no one ever would get a +5, at least at the time of any of the rarer items, even getting a +3 was insane, there was always the chance that you'd destroy both items. In order to maximize the chance of you not having them destroyed, you would get these things called fail stacks, which is basically a counter of how many times you have failed to enchant an item, or enhance an item, I should say. And the higher that number that you get of failing, the better chance you have at succeeding. So the ideal circumstance was to get a very high amount of failures before trying to get a success on an item that you really want to have succeed, like a very valuable accessory. And my god, it's insanity. It's utter insanity. And I got tired of it. I played those RNG games in that game for far too long, far longer than I ever should have. And yeah, I stopped playing it. I stopped playing it because of that primarily, and because of guild politics and alliance wanting to go to war when against a superior PvP guild who would wreck the entirety of the alliance regardless. And yeah, it was during a server-wide EXP event of like a bonus. I forget exactly how much, but it was a significant bonus to experience. Like at least 20% or something like that. I forget exactly how much. There was a big experience event going on that weekend that I ended up quitting because of politics bullshit. And yeah, it's like why would you go? Why would you even consider having a war with a superior PvP guild during an experience event where your members could actually spend the time getting leveled up and geared during? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's idiotic, to say the least. So yeah, I stopped it. I had to stop playing that game. I played it for a long time, but then I stopped just short of like a few weeks prior to them launching their big Valencia update. I played it for a good while, but and put way too much money into that game than I ever would have liked. But yeah, just no more for me for that game. I stopped it. I was way behind in anime by that point, so I had taken some time to get caught up a bit, and I also took the time to actually really get into Stellaris. In fact, so Stellaris is a 4X, I guess you can call it a grand strategy space game, sci-fi space game, developed by Paradox Studios. They're the ones who made Europe Universalis 4. They make a whole bunch of really good real-time grand strategy games, and Stellaris was, at the time, their most recent one, and in fact, just FYI, I am listening to the Stellaris soundtrack right now as I am recording this commentary because I don't feel comfortable talking in a void. I have to have at least something going on in the background, so yeah. I played Stellaris for a good while. Let's see, how many hours do I have in Stellaris? I have 113 hours in Stellaris before I sort of got out of playing it. I got a lot of achievements for it. I have 18 of 23 at the moment. That leaves 5. There's 5 that I don't have, which is interesting, to say the least. But yeah, I eventually got tired of some of the problems that the game has, and I've sort of been waiting for them to release some rather extensive patches to the game that it desperately needs. And especially when they were talking about what they were making for the game for the patches, I was like, well, I guess I better wait for those patches. So when I started getting out of that after about a week or two, more like 2, I started playing Dark Souls 3, which I had been meaning to play for a good while by that point. And yeah, I didn't think I would end up enjoying it as much as I did. I played through it, I beat it several times, and I got all of the achievements for it. I mean, all of them. I have completed Dark Souls 3 at this point, and I loved it. It's the best of the Dark Souls games, but I say that having not beaten Dark Souls 1 or 2 and have never played Demon Souls. In fact, I relatively recently went to try and play the first game, to be like, oh well, I've gone through Dark Souls 3 now. Let's go to the first one and try to get through that one, and then try to get through the second one. Oh my god, there's reasons why Dark Souls 3 is the superior game. And in particular, that being they really reduced the amount of bullshit mechanics in Dark Souls 3. They reduced the bullshit as opposed to Dark Souls 1. So yeah, and there's good reason why I mentioned before I recorded an episode of that particular game to try and start a let's play of it. I might still try to make a let's play of it at some point, but I'm not currently certain. But yeah, point being, I really liked it. I really liked it. It felt at no point did I feel it was ever unfair, which is something coming from me who finds a lot of things to be completely unfair. Nothing really felt unfair in Dark Souls 3, which is not something I can say about Dark Souls 1 or even Dark Souls 2. So yeah, there's that. I didn't think I would beat it. I didn't think heck, I didn't even think I would buy it in the first place, but I did, and I was happy for it. So after all of that, I managed to get into Hearts of Iron 4, which is another Paradox game. This one is a grand strategy game based around the events of World War II. I have really enjoyed it, in particular because I've found Hearts of Iron 4 to be one of, if not the easiest Paradox game ever made. I'm not even joking. Hearts of Iron 4 is perhaps the easiest Paradox developed game that they've ever made. That being said, it's still really good, and it's actually it is still a very complex game, but I think that this deserves a recommendation as a great entry level game for a Paradox title. If you're going to get into Paradox games, would suggest starting with Hearts of Iron 4 rather than something as complex as Europa Universalis or even Crusader Kings. I mean, personally, I never even got into Crusader Kings 2, and that particular style of their grand strategy games. I much prefer being a nation rather than being a person in control of a piece of land. And in Hearts of Iron 4, you really do feel like a nation, and Germany is overpowered as all hell in that game. I have, 26 of 30 achievements, leaving 4 remaining. The only ones I haven't done is unite the world as the British Empire, nuke LA as fascist Italy, as France establish the Little Entente Alliance and eat all of Germany as either yourself or someone in your faction, and occupy Stockholm as communist Denmark. I think that would be the easiest of all of them. Nuking LA is I would call it an average difficulty to get, and one empire beat all the things as Britain, get everything in your alliance. That seems also like something that's actually more on the easy side, because winning in this game as one of the major nations is rather simple. I say that even though I don't have the achievement to beat Germany as France as not part of the alliance, but as your own faction. Believe me, I've been trying to get that one. I've been trying so much. I need to change my strategy. I think the best way to do that would be to do a naval invasion, get around the Maginot Line in some way, shape, or form. Because there's essentially zero chance as France for you to beat Germany on the Maginot Line if you don't have the help of England or some other allies in that war. You just won't be able to win on the Maginot Line, and I just need to keep a token force on Maginot and just invade by sea Germany at this point. But I've yet to do that. I need to find the time and do that. I also need to find the time to take over the entire world as Britain, or actually it's the UK at the start of the game. It's just everything needs to be in either owned by you or in your alliance or your faction, I should say. And then nuking Italy is exactly that. Nuke LA as fascist Italy. So just like take over Mexico or something, or change Mexico to fascist and get them into the Axis and put strategic bombers in Mexico and just end a whole bunch of fighters. And when U.S. enters the war, just nuke the living shit out of them. Yeah, it doesn't seem all that difficult to me, at the very least. The achievements that I have gotten, though, those are the ones I haven't gotten. The ones that I have gotten, the ones that have been fun at the very least. Let's see, a good fun one to do would be to conquer Belgium and Luxembourg as the Netherlands. That's one I got relatively recently, in fact. So as the Netherlands, I played on an ahistorical start game. So what I did, I took all of my forces from all of the overseas stuff as well. I put them in Europe. I converted to fascist, and basically it's random whether or not you'll be able to convert to fascist and get your claims on Belgium and Luxembourg before world tension hits 25% and someone like the UK guarantees the independence of those two nations. It's basically random whether or not you can have that happen, so you'll likely need to restart a few times so that you can get your claims going. But with all of your combined forces from all of the colonies brought to mainland Europe, you have enough forces to just destroy Belgium and Luxembourg by the time you're able to invade. So that's actually one that's relatively quick, and that's relatively easy to do. Let me look through here. I think one of the more fun ones is the hidden achievement called the Wojciech Commander. Well, the name of the achievement is Bearer of Artillery. You need to do some really stupid stuff to unlock essentially an Easter egg as Poland. So as Poland, you need to have a neutral government. You need to be in control of a state in Iran. Yes, a state in Iran. A very specific state in Iran. You need to have control over it, so it either needs to be owned and controlled by someone that's in your faction, and it cannot be controlled by Soviet Union. So what I did is I made my own faction, and Iran wanted to join my faction after a little while, so Iran was in my faction and controlled that state. So that was covered. You need to have a very specific national focus, that's an artillery focus, and you need to occupy one of 3 specific states in the heart of Italy while being at war with Italy. And man, that was fun. That took ages for me to do, though. It was like in the 1950s end of game scenario when I finally did it. But in the end, it gives you a commander whose portrait is literally a bear. You literally have a bear commander that gives you bonus to artillery. It's glorious. Never drop a crate. Never drop a crate. And while doing that, I got Poland cannon to space, which is like get all of the rocket technologies as Poland. And yeah, it's fun to do, and it's fun to literally kick Germany and the USSR's ass as Poland, which I actually did do. My faction was strong, definitely strong. And then, another fun one, as nationalist Spain in the Axis, so basically fascist Spain, win the Spanish Civil War as fascist Spain rather than communist Spain. Take Paris before the Germans. So yeah, join the Axis, and when the World War II breaks out eventually, as the Germans will do every game, take Paris. And it's actually quite simple because the Germans are sort of tied up at the Maginot Line. Usually, Italy joins in as the Axis, tying up even more French forces at the Italian border. Usually, they have only a token force at the Spanish border, which you can quite easily punch your way through and just make a beeline straight for Paris. It's relatively simple. And then once France falls, you control the entirety of France as Spain, which is great, and it sets you up for a glorious victory over the rest of the world. It's great. That being said, there's also an achievement for winning the Spanish Civil War as the Communists, which is also a really fun little thing to do that's really quick, because Spanish Civil War happens in the early game. It's great. Oh, and then and then there's things like have Germany as a puppet of Soviet Union, which you can do before 1940 from the 1936 start by immediately declaring war on Poland, grabbing all of Poland, and then immediately declaring war on Germany and just wrecking the hell out of Germany with all of your forces. It was great. I loved it. I loved it. In fact, if I were ever to play Soviet Union in a world conquest scenario, I would do exactly that, except I would not puppet Germany. I would just eat it. I would take all of Germany's industrial base for myself and use that to load out my infinite manpower supply of Soviet Union. It will be glorious. Unfortunately, there is no achievement for taking over the world as Soviet Union. That's like the only Soviet Union achievement there even is in the game. And I don't think they really intended for you to be able to take out Germany at the start of the game as Soviet Union, but I did it. It was fun. I loved it. That was like one of the more fun ones. But perhaps the most fun I had was as Mexico, because there are 2 achievements you can get as Mexico. The first one is called the Revenge of Montezuma, where you attempt to restore the old borders with the USA as Mexico. All you need to do for this achievement is take over parts of the southwest United States. You need to take certain states like California, Texas, and so on. All you need to do is control them, so you don't actually need to own them. Like, you don't have to get them in a peace deal. You have to just control them, which all that means is take over the US as Mexico. I say that's all that means, but that's actually quite a feat to do if you do it late enough in the game, which I happened to do in my game because I was also going for this particular achievement called Sunset Invasion, in which you need to occupy a coastal province in Europe as Mexico, and if in a faction, have it contain only South American members or puppets. So you can only do this in a faction if you have South American members in your faction. So you cannot join the Axis or any of that nonsense. So what I did was I immediately converted to fascist as Mexico and established my own faction that had Venezuela in it, and that was the only member of my faction. I took over as much of South America as I could before the United States revoked its guarantee of independence upon me, in which case, when that happens, if you declare war on anyone in South America, US will join the war, and it was terrible. Waited for the US to join World War II and take out most of its troops from the mainland, stuck my army on the border, waited for when there were far less armies of the US on the border, after them having taken them away to try and invade in Asia and Europe, and I declared war on them, and the rest of the allies, for that matter, and I beat the living shit out of them. And Canada. So I basically own the entirety of North America and all those sweet, juicy factories of the United States, in which case then I just navally invaded in Europe until I got the Sunset Invasion achievement. It was really fun. And I think you can tell just how enthusiastic I have been about Hearts of Iron 4 over this past, 2 weeks that I've been playing this game for 95 hours. 95 hours is how much time I have in this game. So, yeah, after all of that about the games, I think it's about time to talk a little bit about anime before ending things off.